Hey, Jules, we watched a movie. It was about knights and it
will.
had Heath Ledger, and we're sad he's dead.
You're moving your camera.
I know. I'm like, I don't even know if this is picking up. This is insane and live on the internet. I was like, also not the cadence.
Not the cadence at all. It's okay.
It's like you meant to pre-write this, and instead you're just gonna improv a song.
Life's hard, okay?
Life's hard.
Hey, friends, it's still Comfy Tuesday. No,
I love it. I love that. I was like, what if we did Queen? And then you're like, you're fucking all of your shit up. And then you're like, hey, everyone, it's us. God, people are going to be like, when did Natalie and Julia start doing hard drugs before they went live on camera?
Well, it's not hard drugs. It's late stage capitalism.
Oh my God, that's what I was thinking too. I was like, that's the kicker. It's just capitalism.
It's just capitalism. Friends, we are here today. As you know, now I'm all thrown. Okay, hi friends, it's still Comfy Tuesday. I'm Julia Washington, your host of Pop Culture Makes Me Jealous. We are on my channel today. I am joined by...
I'm Natalie Katona, host of To All the Men I've Tolerated Before and Queen and David Bowie enthusiast. Oh, is that not my normal intro?
Oh, I love it.
Normally just go, I love Queen and I love David Bowie.
I mean, I love Queen.
All of the men that I've ever loved are dead, it turns out.
You know what?
You know what?
Kind of the same.
Yeah. If you really think about it.
We're not going to think too deep about it. We are here today. We are gathered today to discuss the Heath Ledger 2001 classic, A Knight's Tale. And if you are here watching us live, we don't know because we are using a third-party app. So drop a comment in the chat, in the chit chat. Kiki. Let's kiki in the comments, as the kids say. But let's kick it off with a summary of what A Knight's Tale is about for those who haven't seen it. And I'm confused as to why you wouldn't have watched this movie, because it is literally the best movie. Number 2, in my opinion, on the scale of movies to watch that Heath Ledger stars in. Here's the description. Peasant-born William Thatcher begins a quest to change his stars, win the heart of an exceedingly fair maiden, and rock his medieval world. With the help of friends, he faces the ultimate test of medieval gallantry, tournament jousting, and tries to discover if he has the mettle to become a legend. This movie was released May 11th, 2001. So I was definitely a junior in high school. And it's based on A Knight's Tale by Geoffrey Chaucer.
Technically.
That's what it says in the Google.
You know what?
It's loosely based on Geoffrey Chaucer's A Knight's Tale.
I tried to make a high school teacher allow me to use A Knight's Tale as my movie to like historical accuracy project or whatever, and then he threw a baby fit because he hated the movie. And I was like, why are you throwing a baby fit? You came up with this assignment, then you asked us to think critically about whether or not history is actually represented correctly in film, and now you just want to scream at me that because A Knight's Tale uses Queen, it doesn't get to be history.
And other like 20th century music, which I thought was brilliant.
My other favorite show, the WB's Reign, does the same thing, and it does it better than Bridgerton, because I like the Bridgerton soundtracks because it's like a puzzle. And you're like, which one's this?
But they do it in the style of the Regency era versus using the actual like music.
Yeah.
So Natalie, there's so much to say about this movie, but I want to start with saying I really appreciate that you sat through a 2-hour plus movie.
Oh, that's right. I did again.
Again. And I think they did a better job than Armageddon in dropping us into what is going on. Like from the jump, they're immediately like, here's the story. Dude's dead. Heath is great. And they go.
And they're on horses.
I
did get to take a break during this one to sit on the porch and talk to my mom. So I forgot that it was over 2 hours long until I looked it up and I was like, 2:11.
Mm-hmm.
That's not my sweet spot.
Mm-mm.
Mm-mm.
No.
Where do you want to start?
Um, well, I did a lot of nerd research, so why don't we start with you?
Okay. Until you re-said the line, change your stars, like the first time, number one, I wanted to hate Heath Ledger's character because
Really?
he was starting to give me Lucas Scott energy.
Really?
He was starting to give me Lucas Scott on a horse energy.
Like at the point when he's like, you need to run, and he's like, fuck running. I'm a badass.
That point,
Okay.
the way that he just badgered Jocelyn until she decided to like him. He kind of badgers.
Oh, yeah. And then
Yeah.
I also kind of like, I actually didn't like their relationship.
No.
It bothered me because it was very much like, and I get it. It's the 14th century. So shit's different back then. They're not living to 50. I understand. But when she's like, you need to lose to prove your love to me, I was like, this is literally his job. And
Yeah.
people are dependent on him for money.
Yeah.
Like, you don't get to make that request.
Yeah,
And then
no,
he
that
fucking
hit
does it.
right. It hit different. I was like, ooh. I was like, I used to think that this was actually a play to put in my playbook, but then I was
Mm-mm.
like, oh no, now there's money involved. We're in late stage capitalism. They're in
Yeah.
late stage feudalism.
Mm-hmm.
So no, he was giving me real big Lucas Scott vibes. And it's because, Lucas, I mean, honestly, he he decides that he's well above his station. He decides that he's just going to scream at everybody that he deserves better than he gets, and then he's going to harass a woman in a church on a horse.
Oh, see, the reduction in that way, I'm just like, dang it. Because I still saw it as an underdog movie of
Well,
like breaking out of your station because that was so hard in the 14th century.
so then we got to, his dad.
Oh, wrecked
And then
me. I was
yeah.
weeping.
And then I just start weeping and I'm like, no, because this is what Jules and I are trying to do every day. We're trying to change our stars. We don't want to live in patriarchy and capitalism anymore. We're trying to change everyone's stars. And then I was back on board. I was like,
I was back on board.
now I understand why he's yelling all the time.
Mhm.
Because I did not like the way that he just started screaming at her that she's a silly little girl with a silly little flower. And she's like, you're just a silly little boy with a horse and a stick. And I was like, hell yeah. I was like, sports are dumb.
They're both silly.
They're both
Honestly,
silly.
the only difference to me was, she comes from a place of privilege. So, like, she knows where she's going to eat tomorrow. He does not, or until they start winning and like making
Right.
money. Yeah.
And I can't even dock her that much because at that point in the movie, she does not know that he also lives a life of privilege.
Right. Right.
So, like, at that point, she's just like, if I'm silly, you're fucking silly. And you just have a giant stick that you wave around. And then, I was on her side because I was like, I hate sports. And I was like, jousting is dumb. I was like, why are we doing this?
Well, we don't anymore. So there's that.
We do at the Renaissance.
Well, that's cosplay. It's not the same.
I was like, jousting is dumb because then I couldn't not because we're rewatching I'm rewatching the Tudors. You're watching. This is your first time?
This was my first time, yeah,
Okay.
because I was peak child rearing when it released.
So all I could think about was how this is what men did when there wasn't a war because they were so bored and angry. And then and then the bad guy is actually supposed to be in a war and he's like checking his fantasy football team. Like he's having people run into the middle of the battlefield to be like, Malige, we got the rankings from Paris.
Rufus Sewell, is that how you say his name? I was thinking he's Count Admir or whatever. Yeah. I was like, this guy, I've never seen this actor play a character that I didn't despise.
I know, but he's so hot.
Oh, that's a lie. I take it back. He was in Victoria, the PBS series, and he plays Lord M, and he really was endearing in that.
He's so hot.
But he's been around for so long
So
that it
long.
took that long. It took to 2018 before I saw him in a role that I was like, I'm not creeped out by you, sir.
And so he's just like flipping these papers. Men are dying in the background. And I was like, oh my God, jousting is as dumb as football. Like, because here you guys are playing war. King Henry VIII never once cared that if he died, the line of succession was fucked. And they were going to have to do a lot of paperwork because he never had a male heir. And he was like, knock me off this horse, bitches. Knock me off the horse. And it gave him a head injury that made him mentally ill. And then he started killing wives.
And I think it also like gave him a leg injury too that never quite
That gave him the gout that made him further enraged at all of his youthful wives.
Yeah, except for Jane Seymour, because that's the one that he loved the most, apparently.
He loved her the most. She was an angel from heaven.
Yeah.
So the jousting thing, when he's screaming at her, I was like, good for you for telling him he's just a dumb boy with a dumb stick. I go, because jousting is stupid now that I think about it. I was like, this is dumb. They're just recreating war because they're not currently in war, but it's also not keeping them from fighting one another because it's like all of these countries and all of these places in Europe come together for these tournaments. And then they're like, if you look at my sister one more way and don't choose to marry my 6-year-old niece and enter that contract that when she is 12 years old, you can marry her, then I'm going to take over all of your lands and kill every duke that's in your nation. And it's like last week we were at the Super Bowl slinging beers and high-fiving. It's so dumb.
Yeah, I don't want to be impaled by anything.
Also that. It's so dumb. And they're hitting one another with swords.
Yeah, but we also know I don't like loud or violent.
Right. I like hockey, which is just violence on ice. But if you put all of our world leaders in a place, because only rich people could joust, right?
I just had an image of Mitch McConnell on ice skates.
Glitching.
And then like everyone in the fucking Congress who's like elderly on ice skates trying to play hockey.
But do you see what I'm saying? Like only rich people got to joust, which I did not know was a thing.
Of noble blood, because that's the whole premise of the movie is that they, fabricate his lineage so he can, and it has to be on both sides. Like you can't have married in.
Yeah. So I was like, so all of
and 4 generations back, which is like it's bonkers to me that they kept such great records on nobility like that.
It's bonkers to me that they would only let the other rich people hit one another with swords because that's not what rich people do now. Rich people choose to like torture us in new and innovative ways.
Yeah,
like,
that's true. That's true. Yeah. Where's the lie? Yeah, so are you ready for some of my nerd shit?
Yes. Number one, I do love this movie. I think that this movie is charming and beautiful, and it has a killer soundtrack, which is always what gets me going.
Yeah.
And Heath Ledger is a beautiful baby. He's just beautiful baby.
Oh, he's so cute. Side note, I actually was watching, there was a scene that he looks at the camera and I was like, holy shit, you look like you could be related to Joseph Gordon-Levitt right there, which kind of threw me because, they're in 10 Things together.
Yeah. I think I burst into tears the first time that he actually looked into the camera and they like panned in on him doing the Heath Ledger smirk, because I still do get very emotional that Heath Ledger died so young. And whenever I get like an update about his and Michelle Williams's daughter, or Michelle Williams like finding love after Heath or whatever, like it literally lays me out for the rest of the day. And I truly, when my friends told me that Heath Ledger had died, I was in my college cafeteria. I laid my head down and I just started wailing. Like someone had told me that my dog had just gotten hit by a car. And then someone had to just walk me home. I was very dramatic about it. But he was so talented and he was so beautiful and he was so charming and funny. and then he was just gone.
Yeah.
So, and it's going to happen next week too if we commit to Mrs. Doubtfire, because, or no, next week is Twilight, and then the next time we're on your channel, it's Mrs. Doubtfire. Because I haven't watched a Robin Williams movie since he died.
Oh, okay. Because Robin Williams movies are in my rotation regularly.
No, I can't do it.
Oh,
because they made me watch Coco the gorilla grieve Robin Williams, and now they're both dead.
Yeah.
And I have to live with that every day.
That's sad.
I know.
Yeah.
All of the men I've loved before have died.
That's your spinoff show. That's your spinoff
show.
So they kept calling Prince Edward the Black Prince.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, which Prince Edward is this? Because there's so freaking many.
Yeah.
Because they are not original in naming their children. They're all Henrys and Georges and Edwards and Williams. It's very confusing. A couple of Jameses in there. Nobody cares.
John or two.
Yeah. So I looked him up, and there's like no conclusive agreement on why they called him the Black Prince, because he only started being known as the Black Prince in the Tudor era, which I thought was interesting.
I wonder if he survived the sweating sickness and it has something to do with like the plague.
So the theories go from anywhere, range from the color of his armor, because it eventually like turned whatever that metal they used, it turned it to black. All the way to like the way that his attitude was and the way that his like personhood was. He was cruel to those he defeated in jousting. He was a very like jousting was his thing. Like he was known for his jousting. Hence why he was represented in the movie, apparently. Like, according to the website I found, the UK history website I found, they were like, he was so into jousting, it was documented in A Knight's Tale. And I was like, hey, that's what I watched. His coat of arms consisted of 3 ostrich feathers and a black background. So all of these things are kind of like part of like these could be the reasons, but like there's no documentation, so it just kind of pick your own theory, you know?
Yeah, which I get. I assumed
because up until the Tudors, he was known as Edward of Woodstock.
Oh, see, I assumed that they switched over to the Black Prince because he was always incognito when he was jousting. So he was like the Shadow Prince.
But he wasn't. He only was in this movie. Like
that
it was known.
Too.
Yeah.
Right,
like
because I was like, why does this guy have to be undercover? Like King Henry VIII is like, behead me, I dare you.
Right. That was only part of the plot point for the movie. He literally was like every website I hit was like, he loved jousting. He was known for it. He loved jousting. He was known for it. And like, okay. So why did they act like he was hiding himself during it?
Because someone had to save Heath Ledger at the end of the movie.
Oh, that's fair.
Someone had to change the stars. Which, going back to my original point that you and I are always trying to change the stars anyways, now that I'm thinking about it, and now that I've said that, it's still a man of privilege who had to change William's stars.
Right. And that's usually what it is. Somebody in a place of privilege. Like people were like, oh, I worked really hard and I had no help and I had no luck. It's like, no, at some point, someone in a better position than you offered you support in some way, shape, or form and lifted you up. You may not recognize it as that because you probably did work really hard to get where you are. It's just, that's what it is.
Everything's about networking, even in feudal England.
Yes. I do love Paul Bettany as Geoffrey Chaucer. I forgot how good he was in this film.
People can come for me. Light my ass on fire. This is Paul Bettany's best role. Who cares about Vision? Who cares?
Not you.
Not me. And I love Vision. And I cried when Vision poofed and all of it.
Hard. That was actually very hard. Yeah.
And I sobbed throughout all of WandaVision. Okay? Everyone calm down.
Yeah, we all did.
But Paul Bettany walking his naked ass down a dirt road to be like, I'm Geoffrey Chaucer, bitches. And I'm like, hell yes. It's like when the guy who played Roger in the movie for Rent was
Mhm.
William Shakespeare, and I was like, this should be the man who only plays William Shakespeare. Paul Bettany is the only man who should ever get to play Joffrey Chaucer.
Yeah, and so I kinda loved that when they found out he had a gambling problem and that's why he was naked, not because of what I was like, "It's so funny." And then when that guy was like, he said something. This is what I wrote down when he was, like, standing naked a second time.
Yeah.
It was like, "Gambling is a sin. They'll take your money, and if you have none, we'll take your skin to prove a point that gambling is a sin." So it's like, you shouldn't be gambling, but we'll take your fucking money.
But we'll make
But
sure
then
that you
once you don't have
can.
any more money,
Yeah.
we're gonna also murder you to
The
prove a point
fact
that gambling is a sin, but we're gonna take your money. It's like this cycle of like, you shouldn't be doing this, but we're gonna make you do it.
and probably because I was in middle school and I was so steeped in like Midwest culture,
Mhm.
I clocked every time God became a really important part in this movie. I was like, there they are
Mhm.
talking about God again. I was like, I don't remember them having such a fierce religious identity in this movie. I was like, but I guess that was everyone's identity in feudal England.
Yeah, isn't that the whole point of like, isn't that part of King Henry VIII's reign was like breaking away so that way, because he wanted to divorce and whatever, marry whatever hot thing, but Catholicism wouldn't allow.
Yeah.
So he was like, what? But they were so ensconced in the Catholic Church prior to that.
Yeah, they were, I don't want to use the word fanatics, but like it was like everything he said, he was like, you remind me of the Bible, but in
Yeah.
the way that you're the moon. And I was
Yeah.
like, and she's just looking at him, and I was like, that is a really dumb thing to say. Like, find someone else in this room to dance with. Like, I was like, what a dumb thing to say.
Yeah.
But Paul Bettany as Joffrey Chaucer, because the speeches and the intros that he gives in
So
every,
good.
they're the best part of the movie.
That's exactly how you want to be introduced for something that is such a wild sport, I would think. You know what I
Yes.
mean?
And then bad guys, Rufus,
Mm-hmm.
his little squire man is trying.
He's trying.
And
Bless
then
his
he
heart.
ends his speech with, and he has a big dick. And Chaucer's like, good job. You did that. You did that. He has
Yeah.
a big dick.
Yeah.
I promise I've seen it. And Chaucer's like, good for you. You did that.
Yeah.
Because I think when we teach Chaucer and the Canterbury Tales in like high schools and colleges or whatever, I had to learn it in both.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I feel like they elevate Chaucer to that like Shakespeare level where it's like these are the greatest minds of our time. And to like watch Paul Bettany be like, I'm naked, I have a gambling problem, I'm sarcastic and I'm mean about it.
Yeah.
And just be like, no, this is the Chaucer I actually want to hang out with.
Right, right. Because they say that Shakespeare was inspired by Chaucer. Like that's, part of it or whatever.
Yeah.
But I feel like, why are you trying to make your poets and writers sound more sophisticated than what they are?
Because I think that plays into our classism still, where
Mhm.
it's like, well, Shakespeare had to be classy, or else we're not teaching like the white children about him.
Yeah, and there's a point too where it's like, Chaucer is educated, he's right, and he was huge in bringing Middle English to England, right, to London,
Mhm.
right? So like that was a huge part of it too. Whereas before it was like, who's reading? No one
Who's
was allowed to,
reading?
like no one's reading. You're not allowed to read. And the language was so broken-ish, kind of, right?
Yeah.
Like if I remember correctly.
And so you can't just like, I
And
just
he
feel
sort
like
of buttoned that up.
in
Sorry, go
our
ahead.
like American education system, we have such a like, oh no, the people who got to be the greats were
Mhm.
greats because like they were poised and they were classy and they got favors in with the queen or whatever. And it's like, were they though? Like, I'm so sick of hearing that Mark Twain and that other moron were good people.
Mark Twain wasn't a good person. Who's right?
We know.
Everyone who has written about him, like it's very clear he was probably he was a sarcastic asshole, right?
Like, literally, like Walden sitting in that pond just
Yeah.
avoiding his wife while his mommy brings him cheese sandwiches. I'm like, why are we? And they're like, he did such a great job writing about the ducks. I'm like, okay. But we lie. We lie to children in America, is what I'm saying. We
So
lie.
what's interesting this week about watching this film versus last week it was like, oh, I didn't learn real science. This week was like, oh, I pulled up Prince Henry, the Black Prince. So then I like to go down like, okay, succeeded, all the things like success. He never ascended the throne. He died a year before his father did, and his son Richard became King Richard II. But like all these things that I'm reading, it's like I learned all of this, the wars, the battles, Chaucer, like all of it was just flooding back to me, not necessarily the finer details, but just like sitting in the classroom and learning all this stuff. Then it gave me pause, back to your point, Natalie, of like, why was it so important for an American little girl to learn so much about 14th, 15th, and 16th century England?
Because, Jules, you were in Christian school and feudalism England, ancient England, or whatever you want to call it, they're like literally the center point of Christianity.
Yeah, because it all leads up to the Reformation and how important the Reformation is, which then also leads to the, fleeing for religious freedom, which is like the whole root of, the 13 colonies.
No, I'm telling you, they were just indoctrinating you. Yeah. That's fine. I only learned about all of the successions and all of the families and all of it through historical fiction because it was all saucy and and sexy. And then I would take that,
my bodice.
Right. I would take that knowledge from the other Boleyn girl. And then I had a 3-week unit my freshman year of high school where I was just quipping out. I was like, no, this is what happened. This is how he felt about it. But my teacher's like, why? Why do you know everything about Greek mythology, Norse mythology, and also the Tudors? I was like, because to me, Tudors are also mythology, even though they're real people.
Right. Yeah. It's true. It's true. Can we talk about the female blacksmith for a minute?
I love her. Yes.
I also loved her. And I also love that her logo was the Nike logo, but upside down.
So silly. So silly. And do you remember every millennial movie doing that where all of a sudden they'd sneak in a logo wink, wink, we're listening to David Bowie.
Yeah. But I love how they didn't they opened it up with girl armorist. That's weird because it's the era.
Yeah.
But sorry, go ahead.
But they think it's weird because they're outsiders to whatever town they're in. And when she asks them, well, did they talk shit about me because I'm a girl? They went, no, they just said that you're really good at armor, but you suck at shoeing horses or whatever.
Yeah. And that was where I was going to go. But at the end of it, it wasn't about her being a girl. It was just about her it was just about her differing skill set. And then turns out she makes the best armor out of any armor that anyone could ever wear.
Right. Because she understood how the body moved.
Right. And I just thought that was really awesome because it's 2001. They really could have gone in a different direction, in a different way. That was not great.
And I also enjoy this movie because none of the jokes are at the women's expense.
Right.
And yes, there's conflict between William and Jocelyn and they quip, but at no point is he going back to his other dumbass friends and Chaucer's making a joke at her expense.
Right.
And they're not looping Kate into some weird nightly locker room talk or anything. It's literally we are 5 people. We are traveling to Paris together. I also enjoyed that even though they were all building connections with, I think her name is Kate, the lady blacksmith.
Oh.
What was her name?
Let me confirm. Yeah, you're right, Kate.
So even though they're all with Kate and they're building relationships with Kate and they're getting close to Kate, none of them are like hitting on her.
Right.
Or like also none of the outside men are hitting on her. Like she's at a bar with them and
Mhm.
no one's getting weird. Like no one's getting frisky. No, like Watt doesn't have to kick someone's ass because he said something. Like she just gets to be.
Right.
And we don't see a lot of male driven stories where women just kind of get to be.
Right. Right. Versus Outlander,
Oh yeah. Mhm.
where they're in a pub and, you know, they're speaking Gaelic about
Her.
Katrina, whatever her character's name is. Her real name is
Claire.
Katrina. Claire, thank you. And so then they have to fight to defend her honor. And that is 400 years after this story.
Yeah. And hey, I'm not saying that like, hey, it was really great out there in feudalism England for us ladies. We had a really great time. Um, I'm just saying that like that's an active choice that those filmmakers made.
Mhm. And they didn't have to do that. And that I think that's it, because what we're relearning now is just how horrific the early 2000s were for women in general, representation in the media, but also just in television and movies, not just the way that we're reported on, but like, and I think that's what I think that's why I appreciate it so much, because it is showing like you can just exist. And isn't that what I'm always saying? Like, just give
Mhm.
a shit where we exist. Give a shit where marginalized people just get to exist. Stop reminding us that we are, you know, essayed. Stop reminding us that we were slaves all the time. Stop reminding us that as women we can't walk down the street safe. All of those things are still true, and they will still remain true once I turn the TV off. Give me
Right.
something where I can just enjoy watching these characters build relationship and exist in a way that may not necessarily be true, but we could strive for.
And Jocelyn and Jocelyn's handmaiden also have a lot of agency. Like, there's not this like looming father figure who's like, no, you must marry Rufus. I've already signed a paper or whatever. Like, she's
But Rufus
basically
does
unsupervised.
Right, but Rufus does make a comment that he's entered into negotiations about marrying her with his father, and
I
that's
know.
the only that's like literally it. We don't get anything else about it.
And it literally consumes him that she might not be into it. It's
Yeah.
very Billy on the Titanic shooting at Leonardo DiCaprio, even though the Atlantic's gonna get him anyways. I was like, "Sir, you are in the middle of a war. Like, put
Yeah.
away your jousting papers."
Yeah. You know what was really bothersome, now that you bring him up again, about him to me, was how he kept saying, "In what world do you think that we could compete?" Sir, you keep cheating.
You keep cheating.
So it's not competing. You are cheating. Every single time you are cheating. So that's not a fair fight. So I'm sorry. There is a world where the two of you can compete. It's you not cheating.
There's a lot of, commentary that could be made about how this movie really does represent a lot of different facets of the male ego.
Mm-hmm.
And, William also has male ego flaws. Like, he's really brash.
Mm-hmm.
He very much thinks that he's deserving of whatever it is he wants, and he believes that he is deserving of whatever he wants despite what might be
Mm-hmm.
going on around him.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because him not fleeing meant that his friends didn't flee either.
Right.
And then there's Rufus, who also refuses to lose. So William's over here with an ego being like, no, I deserve to compete and I deserve to have a worthy opponent. And because he's the best, I better get to fight the best. And
Mm-hmm.
then Rufus is over here being like, I'm not the best. I just make sure that I win every time.
Right. Which is, you know, modern version of that would be your dad gave you a job
Hmm.
and you didn't have to start at the bottom.
Yeah. He's like, I want coin, horses, and women. And William's like, do you always put them in that order? And he's like, probably. Okay, cool.
Yeah,
So,
but I do appreciate William calling kind of like the subtle shade that
yeah.
happens in that moment, because it's like it really does give you, like, if you didn't understand Rufus's character at that moment, you understand Rufus's character now.
Well, and it becomes very clear that this actually had nothing to do with Jocelyn. The
Right.
dynamic between William and Rufus, it's literally he thought that his ego might be bruised.
Right.
And it wasn't even bruised yet. He literally just assumed that he would be embarrassed, and he was going to pull out a lot of stops to make sure that he's not embarrassed. And the modern viewpoint of that is murdering women before they, tell your buddies that you are mean to them.
Mhm. Mhm.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. Just a quick side tangent. The beautiful actress that plays Jocelyn is so stunning and gorgeous and just lovely, and also not a great British accent.
no.
Bless her
A-
heart.
And she doesn't have a very great British accent. And then I went, do I believe that she's a good actress because she's in one of my favorite movies and that's why I think she could have been in other things? Because I know I've seen her in other
The
movies.
Holiday.
I've seen her in The Holiday.
Mhm.
Rufus is also in The Holiday, right? He's the
Yeah,
jerk.
he's the jerk, which is
Yeah,
why I'm like, "Sir, can you play something where you're not a jerk?" And he does later in life. But
sure. You were such a big jerk that someone was like, who's a great romantic partner? Jack Black in a
yeah.
rom-com.
Yeah, truly. That
Which,
yes, truly.
no
And we'll
shade
talk
to
about
Jack
that with sorry, go
No sh
ahead.
no shade to Jack Black. Jack Black better know that I love him and that I am constantly watching a Jack Black movie, and if you want to doubt that, go watch our fucking episode about School of Rock.
Yeah, yeah. And she's
In the end of time.
but to your point though, like I mean she's actively working still. Like she's got credits like every year up until this year. But also, like, when you think about her in The Holiday, it's not a very big role. When I think about her in this TV show that she did called Mistresses, again, not a very big role.
I watched Mistresses, didn't realize she was in it.
She's in season 1, I think. Let me confirm that. Because when she showed up in Mistresses, I was like, hey, I know her. But I think that's the kind of actress that she is, where people are like, oh, I know her. How do I
Yeah.
know her? Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah, and
she's in 8 episodes in where'd it go? Where'd she go? Oh, 2013.
mm,
Oh, I think
but
that's the first season. Sorry, go ahead.
but I think she's very beautiful. I really like her character, Jocelyn.
Mhm.
Like, I do. I like her character, Jocelyn. I like that she didn't fall into this thing where she was just, like, easily impressed by him because he was
Right,
winning, and she actually tells him, she's like, "That doesn't fucking matter. Why
right.
does that matter?" And I was like, "You're right, Jocelyn. Why does this matter? The
Yeah,
Crusades or something are going on."
right, and I like I said earlier, she did lose me when she said, "You have to lose in order for me to believe that you love me," because I actually hate that kind of shit
Yeah,
generally. Like, there shouldn't be that type of gesture to prove love is real.
yeah.
It's like I don't know, go ahead.
And I get it. He did a little switcheroo and made Chaucer write a note to you,
Mhm,
and they just took a bunch of beautiful sentiments that real grown-ups who had been in love had experienced
mhm.
and put them in a note, which I think that part also made me cry because I was like, "Look at all these people feeling."
Well, and I loved how it was like kind of a reminder that love is collaborative in a way because when you're just doing it on your own without sort of like taking in what other people how other people feel and react and respond and behave in relationships in general, you don't really get a well-rounded version of what love could be. It's like where am I going with this, right? It's like if you only see very toxic, abusive love, that's what you believe it is. If you
Right.
only see like romantic, my parents are so in love, they still kiss at 70, that's what you believe it is. But you kind of need to have input from all versions of love to kind of decide what love makes you feel comfortable and
Yeah.
what love you want for yourself.
Yeah. And it's a beautiful scene, and he does come up with that silly little moon line, but then,
Mhm.
like, he can't speak to her. I was like, "Why is she impressed with you at all?"
I mean, I'm a lot better via text and DMs than I am in person, so I kind of get it.
Yeah, that is the modern version of it. But when he's like, your beauty will be represented in the flanks of my horse, she's like, ooh, tell me more.
Yeah.
Like, tell me more about how my face will be the flank of your horse.
Of your horse.
And I was like, yeah,
Yeah.
tell him he's stupid. This is very much how, like, I think that the Travis Kelce and the Taylor Swift romance will actually go down,
Mm.
where he will try to tell her how he threw a ball, and she'll be like, yeah, you threw a ball. and but then also she'll tell him how she went to the woods and wrote a new song, and he'll be like, yeah, the woods. And then that's their relationship, because I'm like, what are those two talking about? Like,
I don't think they're talking.
I don't think they're talking, which
I don't
is
think
fantastic for
I
her.
don't think it's a talking relationship.
I don't think so either. I think it's
Yeah.
just like a lot of pinning up against various walls.
Yeah, we all at least once or twice in our lives need that sort of carnal animalistic connection.
Yeah.
That's
Mhm.
positive and healthy, not
Yeah.
toxic. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a rugby player out there somewhere I still make up things about in my head.
You saw my I don't want to say that on live. Never mind. Go to my TikTok. You'll find it. It's obvious.
But I also think about these very accomplished actors. Heath Ledger,
Mhm.
Mark Addy,
Mhm.
who, I don't know if you know this, he got to be on Game of Thrones. He got to be
I
like a bad king on Game of Thrones.
Yeah, I think I did know that because I was looking at his IMDb last night. So it's like,
Uh-huh.
I know him from other things that aren't just this movie. And I saw that
Yeah.
he did Game of Thrones. Yeah.
And then I'm upset that I can't remember the actor's name for Watt, because I almost got to meet him.
His name is Alan Tudyk. Is that how you say
Tudyk,
it?
yeah.
Yeah.
He gets to be in Firefly. Like, these are actors that you see and you recognize and you love their projects. But I will hands down be like, because all 5 of them were together, this is their best actual shit.
Right. Well, they were a really great combination too. Like, I think this is a really good example of a cast that has excellent chemistry together as well.
Mhm.
Like, you can't convince me that these people are not all friends in real life. Like, the way that they interact with each other, the way that they love each other and stand by each other. Like, when Williams found out and they put him in the stocks, right?
Mhm.
And like, they just stand there to protect him from like people messing with him. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're all friends in real life. They
Yeah.
all do Christmas together. Like, you can't tell me that they're not convening for Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Is there Thanksgiving in England? I think only in Canada and here, right?
Mm, okay. I think it's weird, and I think it's because, like, I had a mandala effect in my mind,
Mm.
and I thought that Jocelyn does get pissed off that he lied, but she's never pissed off
No,
about it.
she 100% stands by him. And I kind of actually love that as well, because I think there's too much leaning into the, I can't believe you lied to me. And it's black and white versus Jocelyn understanding the total nuance of why he had to lie to do what he loved to do. And was like, I love you, William. I love you, William. Not
Yeah.
because you're Sir Ulrich, but because of who you are. And again, a great message versus like, let's just drum up drama and teach women that they need to go batshit because somebody decided they wanted to change their station in life and had to lie about a few details.
Yeah, and then she goes to, like, Cheap Street or Easy Street or whatever. Cheapside. And she goes and gets his blonde Easy Street. Can we talk about Rufus following Heath Ledger into the slums to be like, haha, I found out that you have a friend that lives in the slums. Clearly you're a liar.
And that's also a testament to just how like dedicated he is to winning and like at all costs. Because like you're clearly a wealthy man and you're gonna walk into Cheapside. Like, that's not a thing.
That's not a thing. Also, like, it's insane. It's insane.
Mhm.
Just get on your horse.
Yeah.
Just get on your horse
Mhm.
and be like, I can knock you down. He knocked him down once. Why couldn't he do it again? Like, But that scene where his dad is blind and they haven't seen each other for decades because that's how apprenticeship worked in feudal England. If it wasn't an apprenticeship within your own town, you just sent your kids
Yeah,
places.
yeah.
And, like, it's not like I don't understand how to read a map, so when Will said, "I'm afraid I won't be able to find my way home," I'm like, "That's real. I also never feel like I can make my way home. I have a GPS."
I have a GPS. It talks to me.
It talks to me, and I'm still like, "This could go either way."
The number one thing it tells me is rerouting.
But and I think that they did a really nice job, like, making that whole him giving, and I also think that the guy that he hands Will to, like, that's a name that I should, like, a Sir Edgar, like, that's a name that we should
Oh, I meant to write
recognize.
it down and I forgot. I was so focused on, plaque, Black Prince Edward. I was like
Mhm.
so focused on that.
So, I think that they did a really great job of, like, softening that, so it wasn't like, "My father abandoned me with this dude." It was like,
Mhm.
you could tell that his dad was making a really hard choice, and it was a hard choice out of necessity.
Right. Right. And that happened a lot. I would say girl, I think even up into the 20th century because it's like, "Oh, I have mouths I can't afford to feed. Who can we marry off and who can we ship away?"
Yeah.
Their story made me weep.
No.
When they're like, "When's the last time everyone's been back in London?" And, William's like, "12 years," and we get the flashback of, like, what's happening. I was, like, weeping. And then
Yeah.
when they hug again,
Well,
weeping.
and then when she brings him and is
Mhm.
describing to him what happens, and I'm like,
Mhm.
"Okay." I was like, "I guess she isn't pissed that he lied," because instead she's like, "I'm gonna go to Cheapside and get his dad." Like,
Yeah. I'm still not entirely clear, like, what kind of, like was she royalty? They referred to her as princess at one point, and I was like, "Princess
sometimes I'm like, "Do they
what?"
actually know? Like,
Yeah,
who
I was
is
like,
she?"
"Who is she?" We know she's a wealthy daughter.
I feel like she'd have a better seat if she was a princess. I also feel like she wouldn't be traveling to all of the jousts if she was a princess.
Unless her relative is also competing? I don't know, I didn't understand that part, but then I was like, "Why are you thinking so hard? Just let it be."
Just let it be. But yeah, they do refer to her as princess. I was like, I don't even think they know.
Yeah, because okay, so there is one scene, one bit of dialogue that I was just like, "Oh, that I don't know how I feel about that." When she goes to his tent after he's been, like, pummeled
Beaten.
multiple
Yeah.
times because he didn't fight back, and then Paul Bettany sees them and he's like, bed him well, princess. Bed him well." And I was like,
Ooh,
"Oh,
Paul.
we didn't need that commentary, sir." But that's the only thing that I
Yeah.
can think of where it was just like a moment, like a cringe.
Yeah. I I also remember the dancing to Golden Years being better.
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
like I was like "Is this what it's gonna be?" I remember it being so much better.
Yeah. But also I was gonna say, but also it's 2001. But you know what? That's not true because in 10 Things I Hate About You and She's All That and other movies in the 90s where they had a breakout and dance moment, the dances were a lot better.
Yes, people still learn the "She's All That" dance
Yeah.
routine
Yeah. Yeah.
to Fat Boy Slim,
Mhm.
and I was like, "Was Heath Ledger just not a good dancer? Like, what happened?" I was like,
Yeah, you know what? He's not dancing in 10 Things I Hate About You, actually.
"Mm-mm."
No. No.
But yeah.
Yeah, but I did love how when she sent her lady, I loved the progression of like first I'm gonna send my lady and she's gonna ask you or maid and she's gonna ask you what are you wearing and they're like describing the color of the
The
tent.
tent.
So cute. And then it's the maid and then it becomes Jocelyn. It was like okay now like that version of courting I guess if you
Yeah.
will it just feels so innocent and pure and so sweet and romantic and at some points too. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I do. It's gonna be green with gold trim,
And wooden knobs.
wooden toggles.
Oh, toggles. That's it.
Wooden. Mark Addy is a comedic genius, and the fact that like his biggest role to date is the Full Monty, but
Oh, I haven't seen that movie in forever.
but the thing that's gonna stick in people's mind is him being Robert Bartholomew on Game of Thrones. Just enrages me because I'm like, but he's so funny.
Mm.
It would be like having the guy from King of Queens being in like Game of Thrones as a bad guy, and you're like, what?
Except Mark Addy's funnier.
Not King of Queens. King of Queens is making a comeback.
I know why. I wonder.
I think it's because Leah Remini is being even more vocal now about Scientology. So I think she's ended up in the press more. And so younger generations are like, who's this lady? And then they find King of Queens.
Yeah. Natalie, we've been so engrossed in conversation. It's already 10 minutes to the end of the show. I have one more bullet point we haven't hit on.
Okay.
The final scene when he's finally competing against Rufus the cheater.
Uh-huh.
And they're like trying to put the armor back on him. And he's like, no, I can't breathe in it. And he's been injured severely. Like, how did he not die? Because that cheater, pumpkin eater. And then he doesn't. But I was like, okay, am I cynical? Or is the message like true toughness is not wearing armor to face your enemy?
No, it's just stupidity. Like when he goes, Watt, strap it to my arm. Even Watt is like, this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
Forfeit, he stabbed you. I go, also, why isn't anyone just going, isn't it weird that he's been impaled and stabbed? Because that's not allowed.
Yeah.
I
was like, I don't like that. But also like, would it have happened? Because in Tudors, when they're jousting all the time, they do dumb stuff.
They do dumb stuff. And that's how King Henry VIII got that head injury.
Yeah.
Like that really knocked him off his rocker. It made him very paranoid. And I think he had migraines for the rest of his life, which made him big baby.
Yeah.
He was already big baby, but like being in constant pain and the gout sent him over the top. But
yeah.
The fact that he like strips down off of his armor and Kate's like, no, and he's like, strap it to my arm. And I was like, sir, you should just be dead. And this should be a lesson in sometimes you just don't get what you want. And you still changed your stars. Rufus actually has nothing to do with this. And why? This very extreme. And I'm like, he shouldn't have won. How did he get enough power behind that lance when it's strapped to him?
Yes.
So you're not moving it.
The only thing I could think of was Hollywood adrenaline.
Hollywood adrenaline. No, I thought that was stupid. I was like, this is stupid. Well, and as we know, the whole show's about jousting. And then in the middle of it, I went, jousting stupid. Sports are stupid. Jules has tricked me into another movie where I am forced to watch sports.
You love this movie. Don't blame me.
I love this movie. I'm very upset that today was so like mentally draining because of the work that I had to do that I did not just like lay in bed and listen to the soundtrack.
Yeah, it's a great soundtrack. It's a great film.
I would have been more prepared for our intro song had I have actually listened to We Will Rock You.
How dare we do a show after we've had a busy, busy weekend of living our hot girl lives?
Right. Also, next week we're doing fucking Twilight and that doesn't have a good soundtrack. What am I going to do without a good soundtrack?
Natalie, I need you to understand how much I care for our friendship. Because in my dating profile, when it asks things that you'll never do again, it says, watch Twilight.
So here's the thing. We picked Twilight because it was going through an anniversary. We went through this last week with all of the viewers. And
I want to say we didn't pick Twilight. I feel like you picked Twilight.
Because I thought it would be funny. And they're supposed to be making that mini series.
Right.
But today I was Googling because you can't do scary. But what season is it, Jules?
It's spooky season.
It's spooky season. So I was like, how do I get Jules to do a Halloween movie without it being a
Casper.
Halloween movie? We already did Hocus Pocus.
Casper.
Oh, I went Addams Family because they're so fucking
Oh,
hot.
yeah, I love Addams Family,
Let's do
actually.
Addams Family Values. Look at us. This is our show. We can change it on a
Do
dime.
whatever we want. We can do
We don't have to
whatever
watch
we
the
want.
Twilight.
I don't
But
want to
then
watch
I thought it
Twilight.
is funny because I don't think Rob Pattinson's hot.
I just don't want to
It's
watch
just so funny.
I just feel like Twilight, like I have a really good friend that I love and respect and admire so hard. Like it's intense how much I respect her.
Yeah.
She loves Twilight. And then like she'll post about stuff and I'm just like, I'm not judging you. I'm just confused.
Well, and then I was trying to like weigh it out in my head. And I was like, what's more interesting for us to talk about? How toxic the Edward and Bella dynamic is, which we talk about ad nauseum on our shows all the time.
Mhm.
Or how fucking hot Gomez and Morticia are.
Yeah.
And I watched that entire Wednesday show after everyone was so mad about who they cast as Morticia and Gomez. And I was like, they're in it for 3 minutes. I didn't like the Wednesday show because I was like, the whole point of the Addams Family is it's an ensemble cast and it's funny. Why?
Well,
Why this?
they just wanted to give Wednesday her time.
I don't like it.
Okay. Final question.
Okay.
Are you still comfy with A Knight's Tale?
Oh yeah, even though jousting's stupid and Will had tantrums because Jocelyn met his tantrum with a I'm putting my foot down and you will not speak to me this way, and then he stopped. And she gave him the silent treatment and stopped coming to his joust, and that made him real mad, and that is also my ammo to pretend that you're dead until I'm not mad anymore. A+ in my book. I was like, Jocelyn did all of the right things. She didn't allow herself to be verbally accosted by this man on a horse in a church.
Yeah. So weird. Why didn't you notice that you were walking into a church? I don't
Why
understand.
is God in every scene of this movie?
Because it was 13, 20, 80 something. I agree with you. I'm so comfy with this too. And I feel like it still holds up with the exception of those two things that we pointed out. But other than that, or did we only point out one thing?
I still think that like weird line from Paul Bettany. I was like, I get it though. It's like him going, aha, we did it. And instead of just going, look at us, we did that. He said something that the writer of the movie probably thought was poetic.
Yeah. So that was the only thing where it's just like, oh, okay, you could totally edit it out and the movie's still perfect. But other than that, I totally agree with you. Like, I am so, like, I forgot, but I didn't forget how much I enjoyed this film.
And they didn't take any low blows. Not that there is one person of color in this movie.
Right.
There's none. But they didn't take like, what did we watch last week? Armageddon. R-word. A lot of 90s racism. And I was in A Knight's Tale is free of that.
Yeah, it's kind of a nice palate cleanser to the crap we watched last week, actually.
Yeah. And honestly, like, it was feudalism England. Like, how often do they have like interactions with non-European cultures?
Honestly, I think the actual, like, if memory serves, the actual like slave trading didn't start well into the way that it became. That was more of a 16, 17, 1800 thing. But like, I'm pretty, don't quote me because it's been a long time since I've been in undergrad. But I'm pretty sure they did start bringing people back like in the 15th century. Like, I think but it wasn't the way it really exploded once they realized they could pillage and sell people. But that wasn't until they started sending out explorers in the way that they did with like Columbus and shit.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is they didn't even give themselves the opportunity to make low blows.
Yeah.
They didn't use the R word, even when Chaucer was naked. And like Chaucer didn't use the R word against Watt. And like that is something, I don't know, is that a term that we had in feudalism England? Not that they like the writers of the movie would have cared. But
no, and that was another point. I was like, ooh, those words actually didn't exist back then. But you know what? I'm not going to be picky about it because I don't give a shit.
I don't give a shit. So yeah, comfy. Good on you, Heath Ledger. My loving memory of you lives on, even though I was so worried 15 minutes into this movie. I was like, he's going to be a fucking Lucas Scott.
Please don't be. We don't need any more of that. Tell all of our friends listening, watching the playback, doing all the things later where they can find you, support you, and what's coming up on your show.
Sure. I'm Natalie Cantona. To All the Men I've Tolerated Before is your weekly look at everyday misogyny, and it comes out every Thursday, unless you're a Patreon member like Jules, and then you got the episode today, which is about ADHD. No, that was last week.
That was last week.
Growing intentional relationships and having like entering relationships with actual like well-rounded intentions and well thought out aims and goals.
I got it. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, it looks like I'll be checking my Patreon app. But hey, we've got merch. I'm on TikTok at NatalieK124. We're on Instagram at Men I've Tolerated Pod. And that's
What
me.
else?
Jules, tell them what. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a bye-week here at Pop Culture Makes Me Jealous, where we analyze pop culture through the lens of race or gender, and sometimes both. What that means, if you're a sports person, you know what that means. If you're not, that means we don't have an episode this week. So go and listen to Freaky Friday with Chris DeRosa. It's hilarious. He's hilarious. Also, we have the Jelly Pops Book Club podcast, where we read book to screen adaptations. Go find that both of those podcasts wherever you find your shows. We also have book club on Sundays. So if you are not a member of our Patreon, you don't get access. But if you join our Patreon, you get access, and it's going to be a swell time.
We have free tiers on our Patreons even.
Yes, join our communities, because, you know, the men be fighting. The men who control the social medias be fighting.
The interwebs.
And so we're dumping our creative shit on Patreon, because Patreon doesn't believe in stealing from us.
Huh. Well, everyone out there, I just want you to remember that you don't actually have to look at a man on a horse at all if you don't want to. If you have to cheat at the game, you did not win the game.
What we're learning today, what you're witnessing now, is that when Natalie and I have hot girl weekends, we should just delay the show.
Usually one of us has a brain on the show.
But we both did hot girl shit this weekend.
Like, because last week you just admitted to everyone, I never learned science. I'm like, okay, Jules. You've had several weeks in the row, because for Parent Trap, you're like, I've never even made one friend at all during summer camp.
Go to summer camp.
I didn't go to summer camp. I don't even have friends. So everyone, you don't have to stare at a man on a horse if you don't want to. If you have to cheat at the game, you're not actually winning. And I hope that everyone gets to change their stars if their stars need changing. Stay cozy, stay comfy.
Bye, friends.
Bye. Bye. Goodbye.